Full time. And welcome to Monday, November 29th, Orono Town Council Workshop. Roll call shows that Councilor Grenier, Councilor Wingard, Councilor Robertson, Councilor Perry are here in chambers, and Councilor Gardner is joining us via Zoom. And first item on the agenda is town gateway signage.
Would you like me to do a little bit of background? For folks who might not have experienced our gateway signage discussions in the past, we have actually been looking at gateway signage for quite a while. Our signs kind of started to fall apart. So our signs kind of started to fall apart. And we got an economic development grant a few years ago and really wanted to look at marketing and branding as a piece of that grant. So the grant was for something else, but they allowed us a small amount of it to be used to engage some professional help with signage. So when you look at the sheets, the signage that we're talking about are the gateway signs, which are the big signs as you come into town, along with wayfinding signs. So wayfinding signs would be like the sign that you get when you come up out of the Kelly Road exit on the interstate, and you I think it's really only from the north, the northbound lane. But it tells you you've arrived in Orono, and if you want to go here, take this there. The other kinds of the other signs of you'll also see that at the end of the Kelly Road, when you have kind of different directions you can go. The other one that we have currently that is also old is our signage that would direct people to public parking. And when we went through that process, we engaged a firm that was really looking at signage as part of economic development. How do we welcome visitors to our community, and how do we get them to the places they need to go? There is a hierarchy when it comes to signage. Our gateway signs, really, whatever you come up with for a gateway sign, ultimately is going to set the standard for what the other signs would look like. There is a lot of work that goes into the dimensions and where certain kinds of signs go. And I would see that as technical. What we are looking for council's help with is, what does the general format of our sign look like? Colors, the graphics, the lettering. So when we went through this process, what became very clear is that the town of Orono, being the host of the University of Maine, is very important for our economic development. Branding ourselves as the home of the University of Maine is very important. We tried to do that. The colors that were printed out for you in this PDF are approximate, but we would look to go back to the university. The blue would be their blue tones. And I think the red is trying to kind of pull in some of the maroon that we, as a town color, have. So if you look around town, you will see signs in public places like our parking lots and Webster Park, and directing people and around town hall. And those are all the navy with the cranberry and gold. Those are based on the initial color palette from years ago. We could not agree on a gateway sign, but those other signs had to get put up for regulatory purposes. So what we're back to at this point is our plan to use the vinyl signs until we could come up with a gateway sign that we really liked. That is not an indefinite plan because the plywood is breaking apart. And by the time I fix the plywood and buy new generic gateway signs, we're into it for a lot of money anyway. So I would like to try to get new gateway signs up for the spring if possible. When we went through this process, so I think the last time this came to the town council, there was a lot of discussion about the fact that the town currently uses or has used the town seal, which is Chief Orono, for its marketing. And did we want to continue that? And I think that there were thoughts on either side of kind of that argument. Ultimately, we looked at a 4-3 vote to continue on a path that took the seal off the town sign. Cindy was the chair at that point, and she had some professional contacts with the Penobscot Nation. She reached out to them because the idea of a 4-3 vote on a gateway sign just really doesn't set well, given the amount of infrastructure that's going to come in behind that and the amount of money that the town is going to pay. It should be something that, in general, folks at least can live with and be happy about. So we had a couple of meetings with folks at the Wabanaki Center, and then Cindy followed up. And what we learned is that the idea of naming a place after a member of the nation is not part of their cultural belief system. And I think James Francis, the Penobscot Nation's tribal historian, kind of followed up on that when he met with council about 18 months ago. Does that sound about right? So when representatives from the Wabanaki Center looked at our seal on signage, what they were looking at is it a caricature or is it a historic representation? And because it is historically accurate, they, when asked, is this offensive? Look what Skowhegan just went through. Look what other places have gone through. Is this a problem? And what we heard was it's not, because it's a historically accurate representation of the person that we're trying to acknowledge. But having said that, they don't understand why we would do that. The other piece that we heard, and I've had a few meetings, so I don't remember exactly where it came from, but I think we heard a frustration that when we are looking to acknowledge the connection with the Penobscot Nation, it is always a historic connection as opposed to a current connection. And so, there I think are ways that we might be able to try to make a current connection as opposed to something in the past. So I think I sent an email to folks, and what I was trying to get to is that none of these, it's not like you have to pick option A, B, C, or D. There are multiple options here. We are looking for guidance. Do you like this piece, but not this piece? Do you want to try to go in this direction or a different direction? Are you comfortable making this decision, or do we need to engage other people? And how do you want us to engage those people? Kind of would be the thought. I think the only recommendation that I have in this process, I would strongly encourage the council to remember what the purpose of a gateway sign is. This is not a sign to tell everybody everything to know about Orono. This is a 30-second snapshot to let people know that they have arrived in the community. I don't know. Is there more that I need to say?
I don't think so, only that I think time is important here. Those of you who have driven by any of the gateway signs, I came by the Stillwater Avenue one recently, and there's nothing there now.
And we can't
And
get,
it's,
yeah.
it's almost embarrassing, I think, to not have a decent sign up, so hopefully we can make a decision, give direction, and move on with it. So, reaction.
I still like the watermark, and I'm
Yep.
going to ask, or I'm going to support the sign with the watermark behind it, and my reasoning, and I know that we also changed the word discover, so
Yeah,
that's
it's
different, so
It
to
will be
explore,
explore.
which is also historic, so I think that's appropriate. I was wondering, and of course I know this is a draft, if there was a way, if we did decide to choose the watermark, if there was a way to incorporate the watermark, keep the sign. I like the sign. I don't think we need to go back to the drawing board, personal opinion. And the colors, like you said, would be more cranberry-ish or burgundy-ish
Yeah.
than what we see here. But the sign, the watermark, the way they have it displayed here, kind of cuts off the incorporated in 1820.
Yep.
I think that it would come out, it would stand out just a little bit more than we see here, this representation. And then if there was a way to kind of see, you know, of course, it's a watermark, to kind of see behind it. It just feels like, it feels like it cuts out some stuff. And maybe if there was a way to center Joseph in the middle of the O. But that would be a design graphic kind of thing more than anything else. But if it's not possible, if this is a, you know, if this is okay, I'm okay with it. I was just thinking more about a more centered, so that we could see 1820.
1806.
Or 18, see, I can't even see it, but I also don't have my glasses on either. Yeah, 1806, just to pull the 6 out a little bit further. If that was possible, it might mean that that the watermark is just a hair bigger. So you can see the O and the T, you know, town of Orono, you can see if you just kind of expand it. But that's just personal, and my go-to is gonna be to keep the watermark and to keep Chief Joseph on the sign.
So although Cheryl reminded me, I could not remember how I voted, but she reminded me I didn't vote for the watermark.
You did not.
That's what Cheryl says, I don't know.
Yep.
I like the watermark now.
Oh, good, okay.
So,
But the watermark could go on either sign, actually, right?
Yes,
So
yeah. So I guess my question for you is, if looking at this now, I think Maine needs to be replaced with Home of the University of Maine.
yeah, people know they're in Maine.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're gonna put if you wanna put the watermark on, should we be looking more at something like this? Or I know that we have someone who would prefer not to have cyclists on there and maybe just trees, you know, what do you want?
See, but now, so I remember these conversations about like,
Yeah.
and I remember when they were here speaking about not hanging on to things, and there's a whole segment of that, of the population that's moving forward.
Mhm.
And so in my mind's eye, I was gonna ask, is it possible that at each of these locations that are the gateways, I don't know, how many do we have of those?
8.
8, that could we have, there's the river, you know, there's the biking, there's, you know, that they're all not the same, or do they have to be the same?
So on a technical basis, I think you could put them up any way you want. You could put multiples up, but understand each graphic is gonna be, it's a cost, and we're looking at $8,000 a sign. Yeah, was that somebody swallowing the food? Yeah. So, you know, I think, I personally would stay with the blue as opposed to the white. If you were gonna do that, I would have the same general theme and maybe change just a small.
The reason why I just like this kind of stuff, because I think it represents what Orono really is a lot of people who enjoy the outdoors and do many, many activities, so. And you wouldn't really need, you would really be able to relate to who we are as a community just by that.
Okay, so instead of discover or explore, would we put welcome?
I'm actually more in favor of welcome than either discover or explore. But that's neither here nor there.
I'd be fine, welcome.
Yeah.
What do you? And I'm not trying to, I don't mean to influence so much, I'm sorry.
No, I actually,
Say it.
yeah, I actually thought about just having welcome instead of worrying about discover or explore, just welcome to Orono. And then home of the University of Maine makes sense.
So,
Oh, I was curious with this.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm late to the game here, right, in this
Oh, no,
conversation,
you're-
so. My sort of graphic preference, I think, is I like the canoe better than the bike, and I like both of them better than the plain sign. Because I think one of the things that attracts people to the area is this outdoor experience they have here. I think the access to the Stillwater River is unique in town. The fact that it bisects our downtown and stuff like that is, I think that's powerful. So if we had to choose one graphic, I would go with the canoe. As to Cheryl's comment about the watermark or not, I have no preference. If we're going to include the watermark, I would like to have a conversation again with the Penobscot Nation and make sure, once again, that their opinion is still the same. Or if we're going to disinclude it, if we're going to remove the seal, I would also like to get their opinion.
That makes sense.
can I make an idea? I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, but I think your connection to the watermark is about not losing the town's connection with the Penobscot Nation.
Exactly.
I wonder if we were able to go with a clean graphic here, but in our wayfinding signage or in, what do you call it? Not directional, interpretive signage, if we could follow some of what the university has done. So kind of like, do you see where it says historic downtown district?
Right.
So you still have the same, if we could connect to places or themes or use language that would connect us to the Penobscot Nation in our current living, working, would that work?
Like the University of Maine did with their sign.
Yeah,
their signs
but
up there
on an Orono scale,
on an Orono scale.
and I don't know what that looks like, but I just,
Well, let me, let's go back to Jeff. I think the reason that we went for the bicycles instead of the canoes was Old Town got their canoes on there. Sign before we did. Isn't that the reason?
that is the
That Old
reason,
Town, that Old Town
but-
got their canoes up first. before-
but I
get
will
our
tell
signs.
you, I guess then the question is,
No.
does it matter if we're both on the river?
We
I don't
are
think it
both on the
matters.
river.
I
Yeah.
think we probably use the river more.
Yeah,
Hi, it's really hard for me to, because of the screen sharing, you guys are very tiny, so I can't really tell, like, I can't see people at all. If there's a time I could talk, I would like to, is now a good time?
Let me respond to Sophie first, because that was a good
Okay,
question.
this is about the bicycles, but, okay.
Okay, about the watermark as opposed to the language. The language that's on campus is Passamaquoddy. And the Passamaquoddy is not our tribe. So we are closer to the Penobscot. And the Penobscot this was their territory.
Yep.
I think we're safer just going with Chief Joseph.
Okay,
But if you wanted to, I mean, if Darren or Jim or Roger Paul is Passamaquoddy,
Yep.
they put the signs up at the university. And the language is similar, if not, it's similar, but the Penobscot and the Passamaquoddy
So,
don't recognize that. And
Yeah.
so I think, I mean, I think it would complicate matters to try to get our signs up with the Penobscot language on it. I think it would take forever
okay,
to do that. It would take a really long time. But the reason I like the watermark kind of behind the scenes is because it's more of it's more symbolic, and it doesn't really hit you in the face. It's just there, which is kind of like what Orono is. It doesn't really hit you in the face. It's just, it's our past, right? It's our
Yep.
history.
Yep.
It's the early beginnings. And people can ask about it or not ask about it or notice it or not notice it, but it's very subtle. And I think that, I mean, I just think that I like that, just that subtlety of having that there. And of course, like, you know, on the other signs, if you were interested in going with the language, it might take longer to get them up. Because they'd all, because the symbolism and the way that they're not just graphic letters, they're, you know, they're all over the place.
I
kind of
think
thing,
if
if you
the
know what I'm talking
watermark
about.
is subtle enough, it really doesn't preclude you from doing something. Because the other piece I just keep coming back to is there a way that we can acknowledge our connection in,
To the island.
yep, in a way that is more today as opposed to before.
I don't know. Do
Let's
we have a
let,
contemporary connection?
let's let Megan speak.
Sorry. Okay, well, I've got now, this is going to hit on everything everyone's been talking about, but I couldn't figure out how to work myself into the conversation. Okay, let's start. Okay, so let's see. I like the suggestion to change it to welcome, because the discover or explore just kind of always felt a little odd to me. But like I like welcome, and I definitely like the suggestion of home of the University of Maine. I think that's important. It is, this is, again, I just want to bring it back to, like, this is about marketing. Like, when people see this is about branding and marketing, and it's not it's nice when we can tie in history, but also this really is about now and about, you know, attracting people to, I mean, to be blunt, to spend money in our town. I mean, that's the purpose of these kinds of directional signs, to direct people, not just like, hey, look at our nice downtown, but also please stay here and put money into the local economy. The reason that now, just from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I do prefer the canoes, but for what the purpose of this sign is, I would advocate very strongly for the bikes. We are trying to build out a regional trail system and trying to, you know, work towards a goal where our Parks and Recreation Department is facilitating economic development through attracting people specifically to come here, like people who mountain bike and who trail ride, to come to Orono as part of a larger regional connection. And while they're here, visit our breweries and eat lunch in our restaurants. And I think that these kinds of signs go through updating, and they change every so often. As we're doing this right now, we're changing the signs now. We might have a different idea about what our local economy driver is going to be 20 years or 30 years from now if we're changing the signs again. But right now, I think that bikes fit better with kind of the marketing and local economic development push that we've been working on, more so than canoes. As much as we do have a lot of river, we don't have like a super strong, we have people who enjoy paddling, we have a paddling club and everything, but it's not like the same, we're not trying to yet use that in the same way as an economic driver. As far as the watermark, it's like, I wouldn't fight anybody over it, but to me, it's like, I don't think it's very visible. If it's just for symbolism and people knowing that it's there makes a difference, I'm not going to argue against it, but I don't think it's, to me, it just doesn't, I don't think when you're driving off the highway, people are even going to be able to register, like their eye and their brain is not going to be able to even register what that is. So if it's there and we like that it's there, then fine. I don't think that it is when you think about how these signs are going to be seen, no one's going to be, a lot of them like standing directly in front of it, looking at it for 20 minutes to tell that it's the watermark. I do agree that it's very hidden behind the Orono. So if there is a way to make it, to pull it out or move it somewhere else on the sign. And then I've always been in favor, like I do like what the University of Maine did in terms of, this is to Sophie's point about, can we bring our connection to the Penobscot Nation into this mix in a different way? And I have always liked what the university has done with their signage. That's great. But I also agree that, that can bring a layer of complication for what we're working with versus what the university has to work with in terms of resources and time. Also, Cheryl's right. I think it would take a long time to make sure we get it right, and we should get it right. However, the presentation that we saw last fall got me thinking again on this subject of, it's not in the tradition to name parts of an environment after people, right? But what I took away from that presentation is that this whole area that the town currently occupies, all of these little areas had names, just in the same way that, we refer to the tough end as the tough end. Like there were all of these place names that were very interesting that came up in that presentation. And for me, down the road, as we work on, interpretive signage or things for people, a walking tour, things for people to see when they're walking around town to learn about the town and the place that they are. I would like to figure out a way to, to make place name markers that respect what the areas of this town were called by the original inhabitants. I think that would be very cool. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but different areas of town had different, names based on their purpose or their geography or their topography. And I think that's very interesting. And I think for me, that would be a way to really honor the Penobscot Nation to kind of, I'm trying to say this right, but like when you are part of, when you are part of a colonization, which we are, there's an erasure there. And so even though we're honoring the Penobscot Nation in our eyes by naming the town after their famous chief, that's still another branch of colonization. And in a way, I feel like one way that we could really honor is to try to undo some of that erasure and be able to return or resurrect those place names for people to see, not only people who visit the town, but people who live here and have no idea that the land they're walking on had different names. Before it was the tough end, it was something else. I'm going to stop there because I'm rambling, but I'll.
I did tonight before I came to this meeting by a friend of mine who lives with me. That the Penobscot Nation doesn't name their places after people, but that municipalities can. So it's a divide. It's not that, Orono the name of the town should be changed. That's not at all what that meant. It was that we as a people don't name places after people, but municipalities can certainly, name a place after a person because that's what they do. But I agree with Megan. The bicycle paths. Orono Land Trust is working really hard on making us even go from Orono to Bangor. I mean, we're working really hard on getting those bike trails up and running. The place names can come later, right?
I see this as kind of two separate things, but in my head, a next step after this
Right.
would be if we could start with interpretive signage, like you I don't know, see when you go to parks, you know, where it's flat, where people can see in their words and you can touch and feel. And
Yes.
if we could end up almost with two sections, one that I think would have our land acknowledgement, and the other one that would have a map of Orono that would show these places in totality. And then when you look at the map, you could either go, this isn't gonna help Megan, but the bottom piece here in the middle, that's the historic, where it says historic district, downtown district.
Yeah.
I think that kind of setup would work for a place name, or this one in between where you might say something about it. So another kind of interpretive sign at places.
Mhm.
And I think that that project in its totality, we probably could get some grant funds for.
Yes.
But I do see that as kind of separate from this, but we would take a riff off the design that we come up with the gateway. So I think it's a great idea if folks like it, but.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can summarize where we might be and where the discussion might go. I think everybody is in agreement that Discover should go and it should be welcome. I didn't see any objection to that. I think we were okay with the watermark as long as we ran that by the Penobscot Nation.
I'd like to ask Cheryl for some help with that.
Is that?
Yeah.
Am I reading folks correctly on that?
Yep.
Okay. And I've heard more comments about biking, supportive of biking than I have of canoeing, but I'm a little fuzzy on that one.
Can I also
Or
ask, when you
nothing, or
say biking, is it the biking with the red on top, or was it the canoeing logo, but change that to biking
Keep the connection with the university. and
with
show
the,
it below.
with the blue?
Yeah, I like the blue much better.
And do you want to revisit at all, maybe 6 signs or 4 signs with bikes and 4 with canoes, or are we going all in on bikes?
What's our budget?
So I'm gonna be looking for TIF funds, because this is economic development, clearly economic development.
It's still real money.
It is, I know, but that tells you I have to go look for it.
Well, I would say, even though my knee-jerk response was I like canoes, because I like the idea of the river, I think Megan made a lot of sense when she talked about all the associations in the community with biking. And I think uniformity in the signs is actually important.
Okay.
So,
But blue with the bike, and welcome, and home of the University of Maine, and a watermark.
Ooh,
Whoa.
we're somewhere now.
They took the blue out is because of the going up the river, and you had the bikes riding on the river. But I think you can work with that,
I want you to work with that.
so.
Come up with a good story, Mitch.
So we came to some consensus here.
So what I would like to do is get that mock-up back to you. Perhaps we can get it in a bigger size, so, I mean, I don't know that we can do 6 by 8, but I think we could do it bigger, so you get a better sense of what it would look like. And we're gonna ask Mitch to reprice it to find out when, how much it will cost, and I gotta try to find some money. You can print 24 by 36. That should give you a pretty good sense.
What about, I'm just gonna go back, and this is not anything that I am dead set on, but what if I like the bikes framed against the white? What if the bikes were framed against the white with the blue? What if it was blue, white, blue with the bikes? Because it looks like, they look like shadows, they look like the sun's out.
So just eliminate the red. is what
No,
you-
the blue, the baby
So you
blue
turn the baby blue
into white.
red.
White,
Where the red is on this one, you turn it into baby blue.
nope. where the blue is on this one,
Oh, yeah,
You want that to be white?
white with bikes, like this one.
I
So
don't,
basically you're turning it, if you took
Or
this one and
this
changed
one,
this into
and
the
turn
navy,
this one into blue, like the
so
dark
take the
blue.
red out.
so,
It's just a thought, and it doesn't, and it's like, I'm not married to it.
so
I was just, I was just thinking. It's just a
if,
thought.
if I was gonna give any guidance, and Belle will be the first one to tell you I'm not a graphic designer. I would suggest, if you wanna do the white, I'd put the light blue above it, not the red.
Not the, no, not red. No, I'm saying take the
Yeah.
red out. If we were gonna go with the blue sign, were we thinking blue sign? Where's Megan? This
Yeah.
sign? Okay.
But I'm wondering if you wanna move the light blue up.
So it's white and light blue on the top.
White and light blue on the top.
I just think you want some more light
Light
blue
blue.
to tie into the
University of
university,
Maine.
I think.
I'm fine with what it is.
Interesting. So thinking about this is like, again, people are driving off a highway, seeing a sign in the distance. When Cheryl held that up to the camera, I couldn't tell what, it was just like a light blue blob at the top. Like that I can tell because of the white, that I can tell what that is. But
Yeah.
with the light blue one, it was just like a blob, dark blue, light blue blob.
Okay,
Just contrast, it's
so
contrast.
if we move the light blue that's in the trees up to the, where the sky is now navy blue, and made the trees white, does that work for you?
That's what I was thinking.
All right,
You like the gold trim.
and do you like the gold trim on the red sign,
I do like.
to
the
trim it
blue
out
trim.
on the blue sign?
Yeah,
So that helps tie it into our sign, our place signs here.
I like that. I like
All right.
whatever. Put purple in there.
Hey, we did a
I
good
want to
job.
take you the next time I need to pick colors. I'm just saying.
I mean, Sylvia, whatever the hell you want.
there's some lights on there.
So, does that,
That's-
all
I
right,
think
so
that's
I'm gonna
good.
bring this back. The next step will be to give it some final approval and, find the money.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
Can I ask one more question about this before we leave? I mean, before we leave this subject,
sure.
with the ground freezing, can we get these signs in before? Okay, so this
no,
will be
so
spring.
I would be looking at us approving, probably coming back to committee, depending on how fast Mitch can move.
Yeah.
Either for
Pretty
the
fast.
December, if he can do it, if they can do it in a week, then we would bring it back next week for discussion about how we're gonna finance it so that we could approve it and get them ordered in December or January.
So earliest spring then.
And I'm thinking the earliest that we would get these in is gonna be spring. And I think at this point, I would suggest that we just pull the gateway signs that are not usable at this point. So we will spend, how about next time I come back, I'll give you some options. I'll tell you how
Good.
much it will cost to, because we could do a vinyl mock-up if we were.
Also, the community connector still has Discover Orono on the site of its.
I don't think I can
Plus.
change that.
Okay.
I think the next time I can change that is about a year from now.
All right.
I think it cycles with,
Well, our signs won't be up anyway, so.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 months or whatever. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to review of charter amendment process and language.
so, you trusted me, can be dangerous at times, to kind of work on the language for the charter amendment. And this was the amendment that was aimed at trying to give council some power to authority to move the annual municipal election if a state or federal election was called within a month of the date. I want to be really clear, the way this is written, it does not compel you to do it. This is not a shall. This is an empowering if you choose to. I reached out and spoke to the superintendent of schools last week. and let her know that we were thinking about this, because this could potentially change the seating of a RSU district member. During our conversation, she couldn't think of a reason why this would be bad, but she wanted a chance to talk with the district. I let her know that if between now and the 13th, if she had a compelling, reason why we shouldn't be doing this, that she just needed to let us know, and I would talk to council about it to be able to discuss during the public hearing. So as this is written, it is amendment to section 1-1-2, and it is specifically subsection H, where we are saying currently the language says the town council shall meet at the usual place for holding meetings on the third Monday in March, and at said meeting, councilors elect shall be sworn to faithfully discharge their duties by the town clerk or by a notary or dedimus justice. We are changing that, proposing a change to say the town council shall meet at the usual place for holding meetings on the first Monday following the annual municipal election. So whatever date the annual municipal election is, the following Monday is when we have the inauguration of council members. Then 1-1-9 subsection A currently reads the regular annual municipal election for filling of terms of the town council and RSU 26 board of directors shall be held on the second Tuesday in March. This now would say all that I just read, and however, in the event that a state or federal election is called within 30 days of the second Tuesday in March, the town council is hereby authorized to call the annual municipal election to take place on the same day as the state or federal election. So it's not giving you the opportunity to say the election is held 29 days from now and we're going to move it to 29 days later than we normally would. It's simply saying, if you want to move it, you have to move it to the date that another election is held on. So I would say, as amendments go, that's pretty minor.
Right.
But before you take it, I wanted to make sure we're okay with it.
Any concerns, questions, comments?
I like
Sounds
that.
exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Making you okay? With that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very straightforward, covers all the bases, everything we wanted to see. Great
Yeah.
job.
It's fine. Yeah.
Great. So national opioid settlement is the next item.
So this is not on the agenda to have a debate about opioids, settlements, anything like that. This is on the agenda. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I brought this to the council's attention because the state of Maine is participating in 2 national settlements against the distributors and Janssen with regard to opioids. Because they have agreed to participate and we are a political subdivision of the state of Maine, we have the option of signing on through the state to this settlement. It's a matter of going on to a website and registering. When we register, I would then get more paperwork that we would be able to read and fill out and really know what we're signing on to. But if we sign on, we're making it's a public affirmative action that we are doing. I did not want to just make the decision that, oh, sounds like a great idea, let me get the town into this. So I wanted just to chat with you for a few minutes before I registered. And if I heard you didn't want to, then I wouldn't.
So could you briefly talk about what is the advantage to the town of Orono in signing on to this?
So, Yeah, so the advantage is that the number of steps that are allocated, the number of dollars that are allocated, if we sign on, we get some of those. If we don't sign on, we are opting out, which means we would reserve our rights to sue with our own legal framework. I can't believe that we would do that. But I did not want to sign on to a legal proceeding without talking to counsel first. And the total amount of allocation is in the neighborhood of $26 billion
Just for
allocated.
us.
No,
Orono.
no.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? So,
No sign conversation.
so for me, it's more of a process question. I don't see a downside to
I was-
participating.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe we would actually embark on anything on our own. So,
That was my question, was what are the potential downsides of signing on to something like this?
So
Any,
one potential downside is you're taking a position, and as it goes through the legal process, you won't have any kind of control over that position. But I think a lot of this is,
Does it in any way, shape, or form implicate or infer that Orono has an opioid issue, and that's why we're signing?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it infers that the state of Maine has signed on to this settlement, will receive an allocation of funds, and as a political subdivision of the state of Maine, we'd like a piece of that pie.
Are most municipalities?
A lot are, yes.
I mean, this is stuff I've been dealing with for many years. I actually had, when I was in Alaska in '93, that was going on back then
Yeah.
because of what they did. And my pharmacist was held at gunpoint to get the product.
Right.
So I'm all on board because I think these people really did a horrible thing to people within this country. So.
What I'm about to say is not to say this against signing on, but just to add some context for folks. One of the things that this settlement has been criticized over is that the settlement, it sounds like an awful lot of money, but it doesn't actually, it's the company's getting off pretty easy financially based on what the opioid crisis has cost just in a short period of time, like while the lawsuit was going on, for example. The other criticism that this is facing on a national level is that part of the settlement meant that the company responsible got to avoid admitting any guilt or wrongdoing. So it's not a question. So I guess if we were to consider that there could be residents or community members that would find this objectionable, it would be on ethical grounds. I think that's some of the pushback on the national level. And there are some areas of the country where counties, not municipalities, but large, I'm not sure if there are any large major cities, but definitely some counties that have filed their own lawsuits and I know that we're not going, it's the idea that Orono would do that. So again, I don't say that to advocate against signing on to it. I just wanted to add additional context to say that there could be people who have moral and ethical objections to signing on to the settlement. Just going to put that out there. At the end of the day, the settlement has happened already. Do you know what I mean? This is a locomotive that is charging down the track, and we're a tiny little municipality. And I'm not suggesting anything that we would do would actually have an impact one way or the other, but just to put it on people's radar that there could be community members who do object to the town signing on for ethical reasons.
any other reaction? I think I'm for signing on.
Me too.
I Anybody supports it?
Are you all right with me just going ahead and doing that? And then if there's an authorization process, we'll deal with that one when it comes through. Okay.
Boy, we're moving right along. Town managers report.
I enjoyed a Thanksgiving break, so I don't have a lot to report. I will tell you that we will have 2 poverty abatement to consider next week when we meet. Perhaps 3. And the big chunk of next week will be talking about market conditions in terms of wages and among our staff, which I'm going to introduce you to Zach Turner, who is our deputy finance manager, and would suggest that you be very kind to Zach, but you don't have to agree with him, you just have to be kind.
In your
He
disagreement.
has done a lot of work on this project, so I wanted to have you meet him and have him be able to talk to you about it. The other thing I would just bring your attention to is that we are kind of working through a couple of fairly substantial Freedom of Access Act filings, one of which it has to do with gaining access to people's personnel files. So I think I'm trying to manage that in a very cautious way that will make sure that confidential information stays confidential and public information is disseminated. Other than that, it's really kind of business as usual. I can report that we do have an inspection scheduled for our final junkyard automobile graveyard, and would really thank Mitch and his crew have done a great job kind of thinking outside the box and addressing the issue. So I think overall it was a good thing. And I guess I will kind of leave it at that. I don't think Mitch is working on an economic development project, but I don't think we'll be ready for a little bit to have those discussions. It will be contingent on some council approvals in order to move that forward. So-
Christmas lights? Is that
Oh, December holiday.
holiday lights? Yes. not
Yes,
Christmas
those are in the
holiday.
works.
Yes.
Feverishly, we had a good conversation about that this morning. We
Okay.
are moving in that direction and you should be seeing things shortly.
So-
Looking forward to Main Street.
So our public works crew had their first meaningful snow. I think as usual, I think they did a great job. And just want to recognize them for that effort. And our captain for the police department, Scott LaJoy, formally accepted the position of captain of the police department. So we are thrilled there. We did have one individual make it through the conditional offer, final offer phase. He's been delayed 1 week getting here, but will get here. So we're kind of happy about that. And we made 2 conditional offers in the fire department with conversations in the works right now to fill the final vacancy. So
Nice.
we are starting to make some headway there. Papers are in fact available for the council and RSU 26 Board of Directors. On February 3rd at 6 o'clock, we will have candidates night. That's going to be 100% virtual this year. So it will be a 100% Zoom meeting, and Dave Chase has agreed once again to moderate. He
Okay.
did such a wonderful job for us. And Belle has agreed, I don't know if she thinks she had a choice, but she has agreed to run the logistics behind the scenes, the IT,
Great.
which is great. So that's what I have, and I still am trying to take time out to study for my exams. I'm not having a lot of luck with that, so pretty soon they're just gonna kick me out and send me home to do that.
Well, let's get you out of here.
Right.
momentarily. Any further business? Motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Thank you all.
Thank you.